My parents were migrants from Hong Kong. We spoke mostly Cantonese at home.
Well, I get the generations of what I am mixed up a bit myself. I'm a fourth generation if you consider that my great-grandfather arrived from Canton in 1882.
Actually, before I went to school, my parents only spoke Chinese to me. They deliberately didn't speak English to me.
My father was born in Hong Kong, so it makes me either fourth generation or first generation.
I was always aware of my difference and my family's difference.
I remember getting teased a lot, and it hurt me a lot at the time.
Mum used to pack soy sauce chicken drumsticks for me for lunch, and all I really wanted was to have a ham sandwich.
I still feel some of that pain. Silly things, Ching Chong Chinaman, really was something which really was said a lot.
I guess in some ways I tried even harder to be Australian.
It's easy for us to say to our kids, don't let words hurt you, but for kids growing up, they were hurtful.
2 of my 3 children were born in Beijing, so they're actually Chinese born. Somebody asked my son, "Where are you from?" And even though in aggregate he would only have spent a few weeks on holidays in Australia, he responded, "I'm Australian," which we found really interesting, that he took his identity cue from my wife and I and who we were.
One of the teachers said, for all those boys who are celebrating Chinese New Year, put your hand up, you can leave early. And my son put his hand up. And I'm really proud of the fact that he does identify as a Chinese Australian, that he does recognise that ancestry and that history.
My interest in politics really came about through these identity issues, I think. It was part of the reason why I studied law. I couldn't think of a single Asian Australian who was a judge. I couldn't think of a single Asian Australian who was in Parliament. It was almost through that multicultural lens that I wanted to make a contribution.
For me, having Chinese ancestry is a really important part of where I am and where I come from. Australia is the most successful multicultural nation on earth, and so many communities from all over the world have contributed to what Australia is today.
But the Chinese community has never really, at a large scale, gotten involved in the machinery of parties, really gotten involved in electoral politics.
This is a really damaging problem where people are feeling that they can't be involved because they will be somehow tainted as being part of the CCP or somehow not being not having an allegiance to Australia.
Some people may well go, well, you look Chinese, you have a Chinese background. Are you somehow aligned with the Chinese Communist Party? And then that distrust sort of starts creeping in.
And that's really sad. I personally know people who are currently not running for elected office because that's how they might be perceived.
I would hope that all political parties can express a really simple aspiration to say, we want Parliament to reflect what the Australian community looks like. We want our party to reflect what the Australian community looks like.
I personally don't get terribly affected by racism, and some of it is directed at me as an elected person, but what I do feel is that it's my responsibility to make sure that we call it out, because there is some other 7-year-old kid out there who it does hurt.
This sort of distrust is just so cancerous to our social cohesion. We have to do everything that we can to make sure that we trust our own citizens. Start from the point of trust, because they are Australian citizens and they deserve our trust.
The common idea is that people involved in politics in different parties don't like each other. Jason Yat-Sen is a great fella.
Craig's a good guy. He's on the other side of politics, so we're not going to agree with everything, but I imagine he and I have had similar upbringings.
He's the sort of person who we should encourage to be involved in public life, whether it's in Parliament or whether it's involved in another way.
It's just so important that there is good role modelling that happens to young Chinese Australians when they see people, like Craig. They can go, you know what, I can do that too.
I feel really at home. I feel quite safe and secure in being an Australian with Chinese heritage. I feel that this is really a great place for everybody to come, to have opportunity, to be able to be whatever they can be. It's an amazing diaspora from all over the world that contribute to what Australia is today.